So I just went to see Point Break. And if you haven't guessed what my thoughts are, stay fucking tuned. Okay? What is up, ladies and gentlemen, YouTube? Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all, and to all good night, good afternoon, good evening. Now today, we're going to be talking about the shit movie known as Point Break. Not the classic 1990s one, the 90s movie. We're talking about the 2015 film that I just saw. Why? Because I like to take bullets for people, apparently. Now, let's talk about this movie right here. If you didn't know Point Break, I was not a gigantic fan of Point Break, but I loved Point Break, because it's a fun movie. It didn't take itself too seriously. It has great lines. It got a great cast. It got a great chemistry with people. It's a fun movie. Great direction, great casting. It's a fun movie, as I said, right? And it's done to perfection by Catherine Bigelow. Now, for this movie, I don't know who the hell directed it because I didn't bother to look it up. Now, granted, I like to go into a movie with a full, clear mind, right? I don't like to have negative aspects of anything. Every movie, according to me, starts out of 100, regardless if it looks shit, right? It starts out of 100, and then it just starts to go down as I see certain things. Now, let's talk about this one right here. If you know the original Point Break, it's pretty much the exact same plot. Slightly tweaked, but pretty much is the exact same plot. Why make a remake of Point Break? I don't know, but apparently they did. Now, let's see this. People say, yeah, they made a remake. It was Fast and Furious. We get it. But this is a remake specifically of Point Break, right? So let's talk about this. At the very beginning, Utah, right, which is actually a nickname. Because why? He's from Utah. He's not actually called Johnny Utah, but they call him Utah because he's from Utah and he made it a big YouTube star. This movie plugs YouTube. This is going to be an all over the place review. But this movie plugs YouTube a lot, right, with the extreme sports and whatnot. But at the very beginning, Utah and his buddy is doing this motocrossing jump thing, and then his buddy kind of falls to his cliff, and he falls, and then Utah's like, no, I'm stop being an extreme sports athlete. So what's the best thing for him to do? Since he stopped this extreme sports thing, he becomes an FBI agent. That makes sense, right? No, because it doesn't make sense. Because his friend died, now he's becoming an FBI agent. That doesn't make any sense to me. He eventually trains. He, finds out these people, ex-presidents, even though they're not called ex-presidents. This gang, they're doing this thing for spiritual reasons, whatever. Now, my problem with this movie is this, right? This movie is way too serious. It takes itself way too seriously. Because, one, this movie is nasty to look at. It has some of the most grayish and just depressing cinematography I've ever seen. This movie is just, it gives me a headache just watching it, to the point. Now, while watching this, some positives, I'm just going to say the positive right now. The only positive of this movie, or slightly, is I did like Delroy Lindo, and I slightly liked Ray Winstone. That's about it. And the stunts were slightly decent, though for some reason they went to CGI towards the end. I don't know why, but they did. Let's talk about the performances in this thing. Edgar Ramirez playing Bodhi. Luke Bracey playing Utah. Let's talk about this right here, right? Ready? 3, 2, 1. In the original Point Break, Bodhi and Utah were great, right? Keanu Reeves, though not the best actor in the world, and Patrick Swayze, which is a pretty solid actor, has a lot of charisma. You put them together, they had chemistry. You believe them. It was a bit of a bromance. In this movie, they do not have shit. They do not have even the same, whiff of air. That's what they don't have. There's no chemistry between the two leads. They are awful together. One, because Bodhi in the original was supposed to be a charismatic guy that isn't a bit of laid back, even though he's a bit of a bad guy of sorts, but he doesn't see himself that. He's just doing these things to fund his summer vacations. That's it, right? And this one, Bodhi is not supposed to be, or Bodhi just in general, is in this movie a Hispanic, depressing, emo-looking dude that it just seems so bland. This movie should just be called Point Bland, right? To the point where it's just like, who decided Edgar Ramirez can be as charismatic as Patrick Swayze? And I'm telling you this right now, Luke Bracey. I thought he was actually starting off kind of well. But then this movie goes downhill once they kind of meet each other, which is weird. But for some reason it does, right? When they meet each other, right? It's just like they don't feel anything. It's like they just met. Literally, like the actors just met and they have no chemistry whatsoever. And this is a very rare movie where no one has chemistry with no one. And I mean no one. Teresa Palmer, she's in this movie. She plays the girl that like Lori Petty played in the original. She's literally in here doing some kind of like weird witchcraft hippie acting. I don't know what it is, but the only scene she's in is like 3 scenes, and then all of them tend to be where she's getting fucked, pretty much, or having sex. That's literally it. And then she somehow she gets killed. This is a spoiler. She gets killed because she was dressing up as one of the people robbing the banks. One, in the movie, she never dressed up. She was never part of the banking thing. She was just there. Their relationship made no sense to her in Utah in this movie. It just kind of happened, and it was there, and then she's dead. And it was, yeah. That relationship was just as bad as Hemsworth and the Asian girl from Black Hat. That's how quickly it happens. This movie, while watching this movie, I will say this, right? While watching this, and this is a negative, right? While watching this film, all I could think of, this just seemed like one giant GoPro and Axe body spray commercial. That is it. That is all I saw. This movie, it doesn't make any sense. You know, and the original Bodhi's team, right, the ex-presidents, they all at least seemed slightly interesting. They all kind of seemed like they were funny, and some of them had a bit of a thing. And here, they just seemed like the generic bad guys. That's it. You know, and even Bodhi himself. You know, this is a generic action movie that does nothing to further anything. You know, when you got Mad Max still in the fucking show of the year for action movies, and you get some lame ass shit like this, generic action movies like this shit ain't gonna cut it when Mad Max is ripping you to shreds. We need more Mad Max and less of this generic shit. For some reason, I don't know how it happened, but for some reason, there's an invasion going on. January movies are invading December, and this is what it is. Point Break. Now, Point Break, is it good? No. As I said, no one has chemistry with each other. For some reason, nothing really works in this movie. They play some pop songs, and it doesn't really work. You know, the surfing is just here and here. Like, I kind of like the Robin Hood thing, but for the most part, this movie doesn't work at all. Nobody has chemistry with each other. The movie is a disaster. The cinematography is just nasty. Also, the part where I nearly walked out of this damn thing was when they try to be cheesy, right? This, as I said, this movie is way too serious. It takes itself way too seriously. The first one was fun, and it could be a little bit serious at the exact same time, but for this specifically, they take itself way so seriously to the point where they try to be meaningful, like spiritually meaningful, and then they come off as boring. This thing drops. At first, it's like, okay, it's not that bad, and then it just goes. The moment he meets Bodhi, this shit just starts to get boring, and by the time you know it, you're just like, wrap it up. Because whenever you check your watch, right, whenever you look at your watch in the movie, you can tell that shit is done. The movie is terrible, and you wanted to get out of there. And the moment where I really wanted to walk out of this film was pretty simple. When he fired the shots, like you said, just, you know, letting off that gun out, right? That's when I wanted to walk out, because I felt like that was just so cringe-inducing to the point where I really wanted to just walk out. But then I realized, wait a minute, I paid for this. I'm going to watch this shit, and I'm going to get it done. Because if I didn't watch it straight to the end, I'm not doing a review. Anybody who says, well, they just walked out of it, then don't review it. But I reviewed this, and I got it done. This shit sucks. Nobody got chemistry. Nobody is interesting. There's no interesting characters in this film. And by the time, you know, towards the end, they started to use CGI for some reason, some of these waves, to the point where it's just like everything's just happening kind of so quickly and slowly at the exact same time. No one's interesting. No one's got chemistry. This movie is just nasty to look at, the cinematography. It's directed okay-ish. The acting is bleh. And just the fact is, we didn't need really this movie. But then again, you know, I would have preferred, you know, if they would have just put the label of Point Break on, you know, the Fast and the Furious, and then we could have just been a good day. But I say this: you want to, you want to see Point Break. You want to see Point Break to the point where you don't be disappointed, right? Where you don't have to waste any money. I'll tell you this right now. I'm going to give you a tip right now. You go to your nearest, download a torrent, you download Point Break 1991. And then you enjoy that shit. Don't see this movie. Don't waste your fucking time. It's Christmas. You want to be pissed off like I am? No. Go watch Point Break the original. Have a fun time with that shit. Don't waste this time here. They tried to do some lines from the original. It does not work. Nothing works in this thing. Yes. Is it terrible? Yeah, it pretty much is. It pretty much is. But I will say this. What do you like about the original Point Break? What is your favorite Point Break line? And yes, you know, Ray Winston was no Gary Busey. That's for sure. Busey could have saved this, maybe. But yes, this movie's fucking terrible. And I will say this. If you want a rating, I'm going to come up with a brand new rating for everybody. The cast, the crew, the directors, everybody a part of this. It's just a big old go fuck yourself. Because this movie sucks. Signing out.